Hey all, it's Elio, and welcome to another gameplay video for the Alter trading card game. This time we're playing Muna again, but we're doing some spicy new twists, hoping to surprise our opponents and maybe break the faction? Muna is often criticized for its lack of interaction. You play big dumb things, hope they don't get removed, and hope your opponent doesn't play bigger, dumber things. They can't sabotage, your opponents will think. They are wrong. We are running 3 versions of Axiom Scrambler, and we can absolutely sabotage. Sabotage is a strong ability, but when our opponents don't expect it, it can be even stronger. Lyra Cloth Dancer gives fleeting, which is really just a different version of sabotage. Sometimes it's better, removing the opportunity to play something a second time, even if your opponent is going first. Sometimes it's worse, being unable to hit spells or things put directly into the reserve with a resupply effect. But overall, giving something fleeting is very strong, and acapella training gives us even more versions of this effect. Our opponent's units are not safe. They get them one time, and that's it. Not all of our Axiom Scramblers are the normal version. The third copy is replaced with this unique. Its ability to sabotage doesn't hit immediately, and in fact, works more like a give fleeting effect, though in a pinch, it can hit something that was already there. Combined with its second ability to give multiple things fleeting, and its support ability, this card alone is going to wreak havoc on our opponent's resources. Our third Lyra Cloth Dancer is also unique. We don't care about the first ability, but the discounted cost of 2 from hand plus the ability to give fleeting at dusk means that this will more often than not be much more effective at tagging our opponent's characters. Our final unique doesn't hit this fleeting game plan, but it's just a solid character that you can play cheap from hand and can act as a Axiom Salvager from reserve, or give an anchored unit a big boost for a big push. With those boosted units, and with our special Lyra Cloth Dancer, it can be super valuable to give Anchor to benefit from our effects for an extra round. Meditation Training, Muna Caregiver, and Muna Druid round out to give us plenty of options for additional turns with our characters. Because we have all those, we want to make sure we have a solid traditional Teija game plan that benefits from both Teija's synergy with Anchored and all of our effects to give things anchored for longer. Sneezer, Aloe, and Drac all get better every turn they are in play. And sometimes, we even want to keep them in play with no stats. With both those characters and the Cloth Dancer, a timely beauty sleep can be just the tactical move we need. Or even better, we can put our opponent's characters to sleep and win the turn and the game. While we're putting things to sleep, keeping things fleeting, giving things anchored, might as well round out with another sleep effect and a spicy one-off Lyra Festival if we're really trying to win the game. We have so much anchored sleep and fleeting, it's very possible to win at the festival, and it's not our plan A, but just like everything else in our deck, it will often be unexpected and difficult for our opponent to maneuver around. Finally, people still claim Muna doesn't have interaction, but we have access to one of the best removal spells in the game with Cloth Cocoon, a haymaker against things like Waru plus Robin Hood or Axiom Haven, as well as a one-off mana reaping to deal with cards that absolutely must be dealt with. That's the deck. Hope it brings some excitement. Let's jump into some games and see how it plays out. Okay, up against Afanas. Afanas and Senka can run out of characters pretty feasibly, so the fleeting plan can definitely be quite good against them. Especially, they don't expect it from Muna, so they're more likely to keep lighter characters from like their mana in their opening hand or in follow-up draws, though once they see this Cloth Dancer, that tune may change. And they'll keep more spell-heavy hands. So I definitely want to keep the Cloth Dancer, and I want to keep the acapella training so that I can basically get rid of 4 of their characters from reserve. And then past that, I'll keep a caregiver so that I can keep this Cloth Dancer around for even longer if needed, and really short them on the card type that they tend to be running low on. Opponent opens with the Baba. Probably one of the better characters they can play against, what I'm trying to do, since it's not one of their powerhouse spell guys, and it does replace the card in hand for them. But at least, we win 2 lanes to 1, and we prevent this from coming back, and we're trying to choke them on characters at least a little bit. Love to see this Mountain Water pop up here. It means that this is a very winnable lane with the Cloth Dancer. Now here, we've gotten rid of 1 sleep already, but I think I'm going to have to get rid of the second one. I myself want to make sure that I have bodies that I'm continuing to play. I do expect that I'm going to play the Cloth Dancer this turn, especially since I'm going first. I have to open with something. and there's not really a sequencing that lets me obscure that. So since I'm playing the Cloth Dancer, I won't be able to play Cloth Dancer and Moona Druid, so like I'm not keeping this Cloth Dancer around for a turn after the next one unless I draw like a meditation training. I can anchor it this turn, but then it's going to be gone because I can't afford to play both Cloth Dancer and Moona Druid. I could consider trying to keep the sleep around so that I can keep sleeping the Cloth Dancer and really go hard on that fleeting strategy. But there is a lot of removal in Afanas, and I don't want to go too hard on that. And plus, I'm already removing so many things between the acapella training and the 2 Cloth Dancer triggers that I'm likely to get here. So I'll get rid of the Beauty Sleep. I'll keep around the Moona Druid as a play next turn, and we'll open up with this this Cloth Dancer on the right, where we're confident we'll win that lane unless he has removal. They do play Alchemist on left, and so we'll trade lanes again and anchor this, and feel good that we're getting rid of one of their cheap character plays, which is what they really want to do to combo with their cheap spells. Here, drawing a Cloth Cocoon and a Kodama. I could try to keep a Cloth Cocoon to get rid of another one of his characters, but really, as before, keep with my character plan to make sure that I am continuing to progress while we have this character advantage. So we'll put back the Cloth Cocoon. And the Cloth Cocoon is not as good without the acapella training, so I'd rather have the acapella training, which is good on its own. Opponent opens with a Sneezer Shroom on the left. We could do Kodama and make it bigger next turn, but I'd really like to try to win the left lane this turn. And so putting 4 power on the left is my preferred strategy here. I don't need to acapella training this turn since this is going to give something fleeting this turn anyway, which right now is looking like it's likely going to be the Shroom. And we can go ahead and play out the Kodama on the right side so that it's, as we're advancing 2 here, I don't want to put my power in a lane that he may have be pretty big with the Afanas and the growth abilities here. I just want to win 2 lanes this turn and try to squeeze out 1 lane at a time from there. Now, we're going first here. We draw Lyra Festival and Spindle Harvesters. Really, the way that we lose this game is through removal, and Lyra Festivals is not going to win through removal, so I'm going to go ahead and feel pretty fine about putting that back. In terms of my first play, even though the Spindle Harvesters gets bigger, or benefits more from a boost since it has anchored, I don't want to get Tooth Fairyed or Spy crafted. So I'll open with the Moona Druid to make sure that I have as much possible power in this lane from all my things in an undisruptible way as possible. Playing out the Spindle Harvesters first, so if he wants to play another character, he doesn't know this acapella training is coming. He doesn't play another character though, instead he just chooses to grow with the magical training and try to dig more for something to get him out of this pretty tight spot where he couldn't beat this 8 forest and he's now 1 lane away from losing. But our acapella training is going to get rid of this, so hopefully he has some characters in there that are going to be able to pull out the win. We're now 1 away from winning, and he has 1, 2, 3, 4, and he has no characters. Here, we draw our cards. He does not have the tools in hand to be able to answer what we're already doing. And he scoops. Take a pretty crushing win versus Afanas. Okay, up against Siggy. I like keeping the Cloth Dancer with us going second. Lets us potentially give fleeting to like an Ortis Gatekeeper, as well as win a lane. If he doesn't play something that's either capable of getting fleeting or like a landmark or something like that, then Spindle Harvesters can win the left lane versus the token by itself with the Teija boost. So I like these as my 2 optional first plays in round 1. And following that Harvester, we can acapella training something if he plays like a Baba Yaga in this right lane. So we'd trade lanes and still give that fleeting while keeping this around to win the next lane as well. The other cards here, I'm not super thrilled about trying to give Spindle Harvesters anchored turn after turn. So having these as follow-ups, these aren't the cards I'm trying to do it with. And Kodama, I think is the weakest card out of this opening hand. So we'll open with this, see what they do. They do drop an Ortis Carrier, which means we'll go with our Harvester play on the left, and then just pass after that, taking the first win. About half the lanes that can be revealed here will have grass. We unfortunately did not hit one of those, so we're not winning this lane by default. Beauty Sleep, I don't love versus Ortis. They just have lots of tokens that they're usually using, and I don't want to keep it early. I'd rather keep my other options here, so I put that back. Here we can open with the Spindle Harvester on the right again, similar to what we did before, putting a win in this lane versus the carrier. They do a Rune Scribe, which now we can either give it fleeting with either one of these two things. The Cloth Dancer doesn't stop him from winning, nor does it advance ourselves. So I don't love using that, since it doesn't actually improve our board position. So I'll use the Acapella Training instead, give this fleeting. It will also give us the ability to give something else fleeting if he plays any follow-up play to try to win the right lane. He does do something to try to win the right lane, but it's not a character. It's actually pretty good. We're now going to be overflowing here. So I feel kind of forced to play out the Spindle Harvesters, even though I'm not getting the boost from it. So I do that, but it doesn't feel great. The alternative would be to not play it and just discard the Acapella Training. But I don't want to go down on resources at this point. So we'll let him take 2 lanes, and we'll at least have this to hopefully block something or help in this lane. And luckily for us, the grass is what turns up here, which is exactly what we want to see to make this Spindle Harvesters relevant. Draw another Beauty Sleep, which for the same reason as before, we'll put it back. They do open with a Gatekeeper from their reserve. Pretty much everything here is a losing play. Well, that's not true. We can Spindle Harvesters on the right to take advantage here, or we can Drac on the left to take advantage here. Because I know the next thing we're going to be fighting over here is pure grass, I'd rather keep my grass advantage over here. But it's a similar thing here where we're currently fighting over water. I just like the idea of this being extremely relevant for 2 turns, at least on my side. So I open with the Harvesters on the right. It also, if the plays are close to each other, I'd rather play the thing that does not give away extra information about my hand, and the Drac would give away information about my hand. We once again have the option of figuring out, do we want to give this fleeting with Acapella Training or Cloth Dancer? Going with that same logic, I'd rather use the lower information play. Plus, similar to before, the Cloth Dancer is not going to win us this lane. It will block them this time, but I'd rather block them with Drac and start growing and being able to take over this lane and get the Acapella Training gone while still, protecting my hand information. So we'll open with the Drac and the Acapella Training. The ordering doesn't matter here since they are out of mana. And we tie this turn with nobody advancing. But we're starting with slightly more power on board next turn. Now, here we have 3 Cloth Dancers. We can play 2 of them, since the unique one costs 2, at our current mana, which I think is something to strongly consider. But in the follow-up turns, we're going to have a lot that we're trying to do of all these 3 and 2 mana plays. So I put back one of the Cloth Dancers. I don't know if that's right, but it's what we do. We know that we're going to open up with a unique one since it actually has an effect, even if it comes in first. And going on the left lane where we're fighting over water is also the obvious play here. Luckily, our opponent does try to fight over the left, which is the color that we can continue to fight over, and we can play this Cloth Dancer out. Right now, it's not doing anything extra since we're going to give that fleeting anyway, but they play out a Cadets to tie the right lane, which from our side is fine because we get rid of that permanently, and now we kind of have a little bit more of a resource advantage, which is good because we were about to be overflowing, and we kind of turned that into a better position for us. Now we're going to get rid of one of these things. We'll get rid of the weaker Cloth Dancer, and it does feel awkward that we didn't have anything in hand and only spent 5 mana. So again, maybe that putting that original Cloth Dancer in mana was bad. But here, we draw cards, and I think what we'd like to do is like a Drac Cloth Dancer Meditation Training, which is going to be 7 mana. So with that plan in mind, we'll have to mana this Moona Druid, and we're glad that we manaed the original thing. But if we were going to 6 mana at this point, then maybe there's some other lines that we could take. We're currently at a tie game. They play a Kuwat, which feels fine. We can open with Drac on the right, since it'll likely advance us, and that's the thing that's going to be anchored, so we always try to boost the anchored things when possible. If they had an Order Spy, they probably would have opened with it. They don't have a follow-up play, which is interesting. We do want to get this Cloth Dancer out, though. We'll do it on the left, Meditation Training it to get rid of this Kuwat in the long term. Continues to be a tie game, but now we're feeling very ahead on resources here, which is great. Obviously, we're starting this round likely to advance on 2. I don't need to put something in mana this time. We're going first. I don't want to Meditation Training something just for it to be immediately Teamwork Training, so I'd rather open with the character. I don't have a strong future in grass, and so I'm kind of tempted to put this in the right lane, even though putting it in the left lane will block them out of grass. I think the right thing to do is put it in the left lane, but I'm so afraid of just getting stuck on this color if I put this left where I have just nothing to ever advance grass, that I put this right. Again, I'm more afraid of being stuck than I am of blocking them. Now, they play Open the Gates. They see that we have 5 mana, another card in hand, so they go all left and are just trying to force their own lane here, which is fine by us. They don't have any characters out yet, and so when I anchor something, I'm going to anchor the bigger thing, and we're kind of already looking at 2 turns in a row of us trading left and right. But if we get some sort of sabotage, then we can potentially answer this and take the left and take a pretty decisive lead, especially with the Meditation Training in hand. They don't really have the time to try to grow out like an Ortis Bastion, because if they do, we're dangerously close to closing out. We can once again skip manaing here. We do draw our unique Axiom Scrambler. If they don't open with Open the Gates, which a lot of people think that you're safe versus Moona, then, well, actually no, this is not this will not sabotage an entry. But either way, they open with the Open the Gates. They go hard left, which to us lets us force out this Aloe Vera with Anchor to continue to have pressure in the lane. Because we're going to be fighting water here twice in a row, I'd rather have it in the right, even though we don't have a presence in the left, and we're likely to Meditation Training something here. So I'm basically continuing this trend of we'll both trade lanes, and I'm hoping that I can pull out the advantage in the end, which I do feel reasonably confident with. And with that, we'll go ahead and Meditation Training the fleeting character that's bigger on the Drac, and maybe next turn is the turn that we can put more pressure on the board, or onto the left lane. Here, we're not really close to Lyra Festivaling, and we are close to just winning, so that's an easy putback. And we drew a real Axiom Scrambler, which is nice. We can do that to get rid of their 1 mana play. And we also drew a Anchoring Effect, which I think that we should strongly consider opening up with, but I'm also still just hesitant about teamwork trainings. So we decide not to open with that. We go Scrambler left, sabotage there, and leave our Moona Druid exposed. This does end up being a mistake, though, because they open with the Order Spy, getting rid of the Moona Druid, and now we lose that Anchor Effect, which is, if this had been any of the other cards that we had lost, it would not have been as bad, since we could have basically filled out our plays here and been fine. Now, though, we can play the Axiom Scrambler as a end-of-round sabotage on this Order Spy, and we're also I mean, really just threatening a ton here, unless they have character plus teamwork training or sticky note seals, which they do have. Then they're in a tough spot. So they sticky note seals and hit our unique Axiom Scrambler, trying to protect the Orda Spy, but we still have this support ability here, so we will give it fleeting either way with the support. And we're currently winning both lanes and threatening on resources, but they play a unique Anubis. After 8 mana, which they're at, it's just a big guy for the mana, which will let them win the left. And we're kind of going into the final rounds in a slightly awkward position for me. I need to get rid of 2 things, so I'm losing a lot of my resource advantage. I'd like to keep my big power things if I can. I want to close out this turn, so I'm going to get rid of the anchoring effect and the small shroom. Here, I do expect Cloth Cocoon this Anubis, and if I want my 3 mana plays, then I'm going to need 9 mana. So I put back the Caregiver. They do go to mana, which is really interesting. Certainly means that they couldn't have played 3 things this turn with whatever they had. We don't want to put our power on board first because we kind of want to find out, with the 1 card left in his hand, are we going to be wanting to anchor Aloe Vera and go into the next turn with power, or are we going to try to win this turn with these guys in both lanes? So we'll open with the Cloth Cocoon, getting rid of this Anubis, and put the onus on them to figure out how we're playing the rest of this game. They play a unique Overseer on the left, which just puts some power there, but that also lets us know all the information that we need in order to play both cards out, not anchor the Aloe Vera instead, and win the game with a close game, very close game, but a decisive win over Siggy. Okay, up against Treyst. Treyst is normally a nearly auto lose for Muna, I feel like. Particularly normal Teija builds. You just can't interact with their ability to get things in reserve or to play things from reserve, and they overrun you with value. But this is a pretty good hand versus Treyst. The rare are Unique Cloth Dancer. The Unique Cloth Dancer is great. Acapella training is great. Everything that gives them fleeting prevents them from getting 5 counters on their hero, which is going to slow down their game plan significantly. So I definitely want to keep the Cloth Dancer and the Acapella training, knowing that. Don't want the Mana Reaping. There's nothing really in Treyst that is worth turning into mana. I'd rather you can consider doing it on Haven, but it's just so awkward to do that and ramp them. If I'm keeping a character, I'm probably keeping Sneezer Shroom over Kodama. But ultimately, I think that I want to keep the Beauty Sleep. The Beauty Sleep is a powerful card, but it will also give me the option on the following rounds, or maybe even round 1, depending on what I see, of using it as a pseudo anchor for my Cloth Dancer to keep it around and keep putting fleeting on things that he plays. I have plenty of characters in the deck coming up, and I like the idea of keeping this Cloth Dancer for that reason. So I'll keep Cloth Dancer, Beauty Sleep, and Acapella training. Because this happens at dusk, we can go ahead and play the Cloth Dancer as our opening move, which is one of the benefits of this unique, rather than having to lament the fact that we're going second. And he does choose to not keep his board completely empty, and he plays out a Tinkerbell, which will trade lanes, but he doesn't get this in his reserve, which is exactly what we want. Draw 2 anchor effects, which is nice. We can use one of these to plan on anchoring our Cloth Dancer the next turn. So that means that we either want to sleep the Cloth Dancer this turn or not play it. I want to be reactive to what he's doing, so I want to have the option of sleeping the Cloth Dancer if that's what seems best to do. And alternatively, I can potentially just play the Caregiver and then double Acapella training to actually get rid of 2 plays from hand when he thinks that I'll only be able to get rid of 1. So for that reason, I'll put back the Moona Druid, though Beauty Sleep is another consideration if you don't want to consider that sleep the Caregiver line. Opponent plays Healing Elemental, so they will get something in their reserve. We can go ahead and open with the Caregiver to obscure what we're doing and also take this left lane unless he puts a character there. He decides to try to fill up his reserve, which makes sense. He wants to get cards here to get counters on Treyst, and he thinks that we're going to give at least one of these things fleeting. But because we did sequence things the way we intended, we can acapella training both of these things. We still win the left lane, and he only has the Frankenstein in reserve that he got there from the Keylon Elemental. So we're continuing to trade lanes, but he still has 0 counters on Treyst going into turn 3, which is great. Here, we got another anchor card, and we'll be able to anchor the Cloth Dancer this turn, so I don't really need to keep doing this potential Beauty Sleep the Cloth Dancer plan, and I do want to keep my Sneezer Shroom as well as get a chained anchoring going with this Moona Caregiver, if not on the Cloth Dancer, on the Sneezer Shroom itself. So I'll put back the Beauty Sleep. It was always a cute option, but it looks like we're not doing it. Here, we do want to open up with getting a boost on our anchored thing, so we'll open up with Sneezer Shroom. And we'll do it in the open lane here, since if we play the Cloth Dancer, this is a great lane to be playing it in, where we're fighting for mountain and water. Here, if we play out the Cloth Dancer, we can go ahead and dissuade him from playing any other characters. Now, we can play a Caregiver first and tilt the hand that we're going to have multiple anchorings, or we can play a Cloth Dancer first, or we can just pass. I don't want to pass and give him the opportunity to play out a character and get in reserve, so we'll go ahead and play out the Cloth Dancer and plan on anchoring it. We're not going to win or stop this lane, but it'll set this up for the next turn and force him to not play anything out. So we can anchor it and play out the Caregiver, so we're ready to anchor next turn as well. Here, we actually have enough mana to play all of our things, so at 5, we're not going to be manaing. We just have a bunch of really just 2 1-drops that we want to play here, and then maybe following up with the Beauty Sleep from reserve. So we'll keep both of these, see what happens. Opponent opens with Foundry Engineer. We can go ahead and play a Spindle Harvester to match its green with the boost there. Then they play Lovelace. Now, we have the choice of using our Beauty Sleep now. We're definitely going to anchor the Cloth Dancer. Well, maybe we're not going to anchor the Cloth Dancer. We can also anchor the Sneezer Shroom and sleep the Cloth Dancer. This will put us in a strong position to win this lane, but it does give up the water in this lane, which is tough. But in doing that, we're prepared to fight over mountain water the next turn, where we'll both be in that color, and so it's much more likely we win this lane and we're winning this lane because we have a 4/4/4 to start out. So even though we throw this lane, it's such a good position for the next turn that I like anchoring Sneezer Shroom on the right and sleeping my own Cloth Dancer to continue to have this effect and to have a great next round there. Now, they do play out a third unit. The one play that we could consider doing here is Beauty Sleeping the Foundry Engineer. This would ensure that they're only getting one thing in their reserve next turn, and that they're not advancing on the grass. But we're not going to be fighting over the grass next turn because, we will a little bit, but it's not as strong as our mountain water. So we're kind of fine. We kind of expect that we're going to lose grass this side next time, but we're very unlikely to lose mountain water, especially with us giving this Ada Lovelace leading. So I feel it's better to hold on to the Beauty Sleep rather than stop them this turn, especially since, in future rounds, maybe I can use this to actually win a lane. But that was definitely an option. Once again, we have a really low mana cost of stuff here. We can't cast 2 Beauty Sleeps, but I don't want to mana this Beauty Sleep, so I'm going to stay on 5 again. We can open up with a Kodama on the left lane. Push comes to shove, we could always sleep our own Sneezer Shroom if that felt like the right thing to do. But since he played left, we'll go ahead and try to force the mountain win here at least, and at least the water win, and hopefully at least tie the mountain by sleeping this Foundry Engineer. They do get Haven though. I'll also note, the other thing I could have done there is potentially sleep this Cloth Dancer to keep doing that little game, but now we're at the end game and it's no longer, really worth it for me to try to get rid of the fleeting or the counters. It's going to be difficult or it's easier for us to close out the game than to stop that, and so I want to keep the power on the board. He does hit an Athena, which lets him take this right lane, so we do trade once again, but at least we're starting the next round with a big thing in play. And he's still short a counter from what he's showing us right now to be able to go off. here we now have 2, 3, 4, and probably a 6th mana here. Even if it's the 5, we want to put something back. So we want to try to end it this turn. Certainly we don't want to go more than 2 extra turns. And so with that, the Caregiver is just an 0/1/0, and the Anchor effect doesn't come into play until 2 turns from now. So we can put back the Caregiver and try to figure out how we can win with what we have here. We're already winning left, which is great, but he opens up with a extremely good Anansi in this situation. 1, it's going to get huge, so it'll be hard to beat on water here. And 2, it puts another card in his reserve, which means he's going to be able to trigger Treyst and Rossum this turn. But luckily, we do have the Beauty Sleeps. I don't want to tilt my hand that I can potentially fight over this. I want to make it look like I'm kind of giving that up. So I can open on left with Sneezer Shroom and just try to bolster this, and eventually try to sneak in a Spindle Harvesters plus Sleep to take this lane on the right. Opponent plays their own stall moves with the Keelan Cylinder. I mean, it's not too much of a stall move, but he's going to be fighting over left. We can play the Kodama from hand to, again, not show our hand for as long as we can. And then finally, at the last opportunity, we can then play Spindle Harvester on right. And now he can draw and pitch with Treyst. If it's a 1-drop, then it'll probably go left and force that lane, in which case we can sleep the smallest thing so that we win the lane and whatever is there isn't contributing too much power going to the next turn. Or we could sleep this, because it would mean that this is a powerful effect, just putting another thing in reserve and letting it be playable by Haven. And maybe it's best to just leave this here. I don't know. I think we probably sleep the smaller thing instead and hope that we get a Axiom Scrambler. Right now, he doesn't know it, but the onus is on him to play something. But he draws a 2-drop, which is not going to be enough. And we get to Beauty Sleep on the right here, taking the right lane. We're already winning the left lane on grass. And yeah, a Muna deck managed to take down Treyst and Rossum, winning by 2 points. Okay, that's the games. I really love playing with this deck. However strong it is, which I do think it's pretty decent, it's really just fun to surprise your opponents and do things that they don't expect. And once people start to think about this thing, even if you're not playing these cards, maybe the next time your opponent plays against Muna and thinks that they're safe against Sabotage, they'll think twice before making that extra greedy play. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing. It lets me know that you enjoy the videos and I should continue making more content. Until next time, thank you for watching.